Welcome to The Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada and with the support of Omnovos, Canada's digital customer engagement company. Omnovos makes personalization easy by helping you engage the right customer with the right content at the right time. Find out how you can get started quickly and affordably so you can focus on doing what matters most, driving revenue and margin growth at realcustomerengagement.com. This episode is also supported by Access Communications. For a smarter, safer world by combining intelligent technology and human imagination, Access offers solutions based on sight, sound, and analytics to improve security and optimize business performance. In this episode, I welcome Eric Claus, new CEO of MEC, and talk about his rich history in retail industry and return to the front lines to lead one of Canada's most beloved retail brands. Next, I catch up with Rick Snook, Access Communications, and discover the vital role that Access played before and during the pandemic to bring the LPAP community together, plus forward-thinking strategies marrying AI technology, machine vision, and deep retail insight. But first, let's hear from Eric from MEC. Eric, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. You?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me, and it's a great opportunity to connect back into the market and to connect with you. And I'm really looking forward to the conversation, get to know you a bit better and your thoughts around MEC and the future of MEC. Why don't we jump right in? Tell us a little bit about yourself and personal professional journey and your role now at MEC.
Yeah, well, thanks for that, Michael. I'm actually it's nice to be back in Canada and doing something Canadian. I've spent most of the last 15 years in the U.S. My retail journey, well, I grew up in Montreal. By accident, I ended up in the retail space. And by accident, I actually ended up, just because they paid a little bit more money, I took an assistant manager kind of training program way back when in my career. That all led, fast forward to working for, a lot of different Canadian retailers, which, unfortunately, just the way of the world are probably no longer around. Worked my way up through the stores, offices, and my first CEO job was actually Co-op Atlantic in Eastern Canada, based out of Moncton. From there, I took over A&P Canada, which was, as you know, Dominion Food Basics and A&P stores. We sold that to Metro. Then I moved down to run the whole operation down in the U.S. And again, I'll fast forward, did a bunch of different things for some private equity guys, and then ended up as CEO of Save-A-Lot, which is 1,400 stores based in St. Louis, which was a division of Super Value and was brought in there to either take it public or sell it. We sold that to Onyx. And then I kind of, I was also on, different boards. I was on the board of directors of Rona until we sold that to Lowe's. And then I basically took almost 3 years with my wife and traveled. So I'm a pilot, so we flew down to almost South America and island hopped all the way back, and then did a bunch of adventure vacations and spent a lot of time at our place in Dominican Republic and in Nova Scotia. I had been doing a fair bit of work with private equity firms, just in advising them on different acquisitions, for the most part, all in the U.S. and almost all food related. And one of the firms that I had done a few advisory stints with was Kingswood Capital out of Los Angeles. And when Alex Wolf, who founded Kingswood, gave me a shout, I guess it was back in July of this year. And I was back in Canada, given the COVID situation in Dominican Republic was not the best place to be. Right. And he basically said, Eric, have you ever heard of MEC? And I was kind of like, MEC, of course. I've been a member since 1984, and when in Canada, I've always shopped MEC, and when in the US, I've shopped REI because I'm very much an outdoors kind of person. So I was kind of taken aback and actually shocked and said, how could you be looking at MEC? MEC is a co-op. And he said, no, MEC is in trouble there in CCAA. And I said, I thought that's, it was almost incredulous to me. But anyways, long story short, took a look at it and said, you know what, this is absolutely it's almost an institution in Canada, very well respected brand, and once I dug into kind of the numbers and looked at it, actually, a very healthy store base, but ran into troubles, financially, with overspend over the last number of years. They had brought in a new CEO who had done a lot of the heavy lifting to try to, curtail the cost. But I guess with the COVID, it was just too late. And then, they said, I was looking at it and happy to help them out. And they said, we'd really, like you to run it. So myself and one of the fellows that found the deal for Kingswood, Jay Taylor, partnered up with Kingswood to run the operation for them.
Well, you're right that the challenges for the brand MEC predated the COVID crisis, but being closed for a couple of months was just very difficult for them to sustain, even though, and we'll talk about this a bit later, we're having this kind of outdoor economy right now with everyone kind of, spending more time outdoors than in. So I think there's opportunity nested within the challenges for sure. So catch us up, because there's been a lot of news about MEC, plenty of news and developments over the past several months. Are you still in protection? Is the ownership complete? There was some certainly passionate members. As you said, it's, an institution like MEC doesn't, change hands without a tremendous amount of energy and passion. So just catch us up on the current state of affairs.
Yeah. So MEC was in CCAA, went through the process. We were, selected as the business to win the bid, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And we closed on the transaction the very first few days of November. And we've been operating the business since then. It came with a lot of noise, that's for sure. The fact that MEC is a bit of an institution, the fact that it's a co-op, there's a lot of very passionate members. I'd say particularly members that have been around for a long time.
They've seen a lot of changes over the past 5 years, right? I mean,
yeah,
a lot of changes in the brand itself and all kinds of different things. Meant, I'm sure, to be, as I've known both of the prior presidents, meant to modernize against what was clearly an evolving set of competitors.
Yeah, I would say that the business has been pretty steady for quite a few years. So I don't see the obviously there's things to improve in terms of the merchandise mix. There's just a lot of things like in any retail company to fix. But typically in all the potential acquisitions of retailers that I've looked at that have been in trouble, you would typically have a damaged brand or you would have a lot of underperforming stores. In the case of MEC, that was not the case. The issue with MEC was really I think a problem that had more to do about capital that was spent on, things like a very, very expensive head office a number of years ago, that would house 600 people. And for a company of this size, that's really not in the realm of reality. There were, many, many millions of dollars spent on some store relocations and renovations that in the end really didn't deliver incremental sales and value. Right. And that's really what kind of put the business into trouble from my vantage point. The state that we've picked it up in through CCAA, we've been able to negotiate our leases quite favorably, and the landlords have been very accommodating and very supportive. We will be downsizing the office. We've already gone through some of the pain of getting the number of people working in the office to the right number. We're there now. Yeah. So now it's really, the kind of double whammy of navigating through a very difficult time in terms of the pandemic and just getting things back up and running, getting vendors back online. And right. But we're doing that at a pretty fast pace. So we're pretty optimistic and upbeat about that.
It's interesting, the parallels, right, between, and you mentioned REI, I believe they just sold their headquarters to Facebook, of all people, as well. Like it's just an interesting how the business is parallel. So you are still in protection, or you're now, the ownership transfer has happened. Are you still operating under protection, or are you?
Oh, no. We once the transaction closed, the CCAA is kind of over. So the legal name MEC Canada now the owner or operating name will be MEC or for marketing and labeling purposes and all that kind of stuff with the Mountain Equipment Company. No, we're up and running, and we've got our financial situation in good order. We're definitely not a leverage kind of a purchase. We have very little debt, and we have a lot of availability. So we're in good shape to get through this pandemic. I guess there's a couple of things that come out of this that are positive through all the negative of a pandemic. One is that, like you mentioned earlier, we're in a really good space. Outdoors is just on fire. I mean, we can't get bicycles. We can't get bike parts. We can't get snowshoes. And it's not because of us. It's just there's a shortage. There's been a massive.
It's a global demand. It's great. It's a global. We've never seen it. The other thing that retailers have told me is that the supply chain was harder to restart than it was to stop. A lot of if you think back to April, many executives were really concerned about liquidity, so they kind of put the brakes on purchase orders, and of course, then their vendors put their brakes on the purchase orders, and now restarting, and not just restarting to normal volumes, but to abnormal volumes has been quite a challenge for the entire industry. Yeah,
and you've got a lot of manufacturers that are for example in the bike business and the particularly in hard goods that you can't tool up that quickly.
Right.
So if you're making gears for bicycles or brakes or snowshoes, that requires molds. That requires it's a lot of time. So no one's had time to really to gear up. So you've got basically existing manufacturers that are flat out. Not to mention the points that you just mentioned, which is that just to get back up and running is difficult on its own. But if you've got to then take this incredible increased amount of volume, you just can't handle it.
Well, and to compound things, and it'll be interesting to see what happens next year. But I was doing a presentation about that you can't buy space on a boat now from China to North America. You're sold out, and you can't build new containers. The container manufacturers are sold out because certainly the tariffs between China and the U.S. didn't dampen demand, but certainly the COVID era has brought in a lot of big ticket furniture buying that has really taken up a lot of space. So retailers like yourself are not unfamiliar with logistical challenges, but this one is a particularly gnarly one, I think, for you and everyone else. Yeah, we've been kind of lucky in terms of what has come in, what's coming in. We haven't hit a lot of roadblocks in terms of bringing the goods in, particularly from Asia. But I would say the toughest thing for us is going from CCAA, which was the former MEC, to getting vendors back on and shipping, and it all takes a bit of time, and it takes a lot of it's a lot of phone calls to a lot of vendors, and for some of them it's difficult to understand. There's a lot of American vendors that really didn't understand the CCAA process to start with. And then you've got a lot of hand-holding overseas. So you're talking to Asian vendors that are holding fabric. They it's very difficult for them to understand, and they work on LCs and show me the LC, and so it's transfer of LCs. A lot of very technical things to fix, but those are all short-term hurdles that really we don't see as a major impediment to the progress of the business. Well, that's a great segue. Let's talk about the future of the business. I mean, you've got millions of passionate co-op members that are now millions of prospective, lapsed, or existing customers. You manage them through the transition. And what are your plans for the future, for the growing? I mean, stabilize the business. I mean, it's a bit unfair. You've been there for not too long, but what are you thinking about in the short term, just kind of get by, but in the longer term, 2021, how do you think about that transition for the market, from a marketing perspective and customer relation perspective, and then the brand and business in 2021? Yeah, so we still see 2021 as a very difficult year. The way we look at it, we kind of look at our same store sales relative to 2019, because you just got to take 2020 and pretend it never happened. And we all wish. A lot of people, wish it never happened. So we still think 2021 is going to be a difficult year particularly for the bricks and mortar business. We still think it's going to be difficult from a supply chain point of view. It'll be better.
Obviously, then 2021, that would be hard not to do better than that. We've seen tremendous growth in the e-commerce, and we're fortunate that there was already a robust e-commerce platform there. So that's kind of a plus. I mean, that's really grown. Obviously, in the early days of the pandemic, the increases over prior year were, just astronomical. They've kind of settled down to a very healthy level, and we think that'll continue. We're reopening, as you know, we took on 21 of the 22 stores, which was not what most people would have thought. But we think that MEC is a bit of a special business, and look, we're not a Canadian Tire, we're not a Cabela's. We're very different in the sense that we're very technically proficient, and the people in the stores are, for the most part, very passionate about the outdoors themselves. They love to they love to share that information with members, customers. So we're very, very cognizant of the fact that we're lucky that we've got this a really great team of people, and that does make us a little bit different because people do go in for advice, and I can use myself as the perfect example because I've spent in the years that we took off traveling, spent more than 6 months hiking and biking in Alaska and Yukon, and we were in the Amazon, and so to go to a MEC and get technical advice was very important for us, and it is for a lot of our members. Today, it's more difficult because of the pandemic, but going forward, the in-store clinics, that we'll hold with members and customers is going to be very, very important for us. The continued kind of association with outdoor groups and bringing the outdoors to a lot of Canada remains a big, big part of the future. So I think there's a real opportunity for us to blend that online and physical bricks and mortar experience just because of who we are. And I've seen it happen, in so many instances where someone's in a store getting technical advice, and then you've got an expert that you're speaking to that actually gets onto a computer and says, look, we don't carry this in the store, but if you want this, specific kind of kayak that's a low profile, better, face into waves and stability, but not, when you're hitting them laterally. So it's that kind of information that they have that they can now blend in a combination of the bricks and mortar and the e-com. So we see a lot of opportunity just to grow both businesses. We are very much standalone physical facilities in the stores. So we're a bit of a destination. We don't have an over concentration in any market. The biggest markets that we would have in the biggest cities have no more than 3 stores. So so from that point of view, we see the opportunity for both the bricks and mortar and the e-com as big growth vehicles. We also see that you mentioned the membership, and there were over 5 million MEC members. Although
I'm one myself. I was one of myself for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. Almost everybody you speak to that does anything outdoors is a MEC member and has a love for it. And when you were talking earlier, this is kind of interesting about there was a lot of members, the Save MEC group of people that were pretty irate, and I understand that. Sometimes it's difficult to swallow the kind of the situation, but the way we look at it, we did not create it, and we were here. We were the ones that came in basically and saved 21 of 22 stores and the business and a lot of jobs in the head office. So,
and that's one of the reasons. I believe that's one of the reasons Kingswood was selected by the board of directors, because very, very store facing. Keep the business and keep the people with the advantages that you've been describing. I mean, I think it's that vision that seems to have captured the attention, particularly of the board of directors. Yeah,
that's absolutely correct. That was one of their biggest points, and we actually only committed to 17. And then, working with landlords through the CCAA process, some of the more fringe stores that were not quite as successful as the larger kind of stalwart Vancouvers and Torontos and Victorias of the world became
more viable in the business.
Yeah,
model,
absolutely. Right? So they really worked with us. And it was not at all a, kind of confrontational kind of discussion. It was really one, what can work for you, what can work for us. So,
this is happening. Let's see if we can keep the business and even grow the business. So I can't have you on this end of the mic at this time of the year without asking, and given now even more so now that I know your background of being a world traveler, adventurer, been in the Amazon. What's on your list? What are your favorite items? What's hot, so to speak? Bicycles, obviously, but okay, that's an easy give. But is there anything you got your eye on that you said, boy, now that I'm walking the stores and looking at the assortment, I got to pick up one of those?
I'm kind of like a kid in a candy shop when I get into a MEC store, because first of all, I love in the soft goods. I love a lot of the technical gear, and a lot of it has a nice fashion twist to it. So you can wear something that's fairly technical, and you don't have to look like you're hiking in the rainy season in the Amazon.
Or portaging canoes all day long.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, it's I like the technical stuff. So I like a lot of the footwear. Being out here in Vancouver, we're in proximity to a lot of some of the best skiing in the world. So I'm looking at new ski gear. I'm looking at updating my footwear for snowshoeing. Again, those are all areas that are really on fire. Anything right now, anything that is snow, outdoors, snowshoes we can't get. And believe it or not, even at this time of year, bicycles, another like crazy hot item is the bike trainers.
Right.
Yeah, so those are, and they're very expensive units. Climbing and all the, the ice kind of gear for climbing is hot. Anything outdoors in terms of, down jackets, kids' outerwear, all of that is hot. And we'll be doing a lot of changes. Well, I shouldn't say a lot of changes, but I think some real improvements onto particularly the soft goods side of things when it comes to the MEC label. So we'll be streamlining assortments. There's things we'll be taking out, like we don't need to be in pet food, for example. We're not a yoga store. So, we really want to focus more on what made MEC what it was in the first place. And I think our success will be to protect the secret sauce, which is like the people in the stores, the product, and obviously really pricing it right and making sure that we really give value. We're not a low end store by any stretch. So you'll never go into MEC and go, wow, this is really cheap. But you can go into MEC and go, wow, I really got good value, and we want to retain that.
Right. Well, Eric, it's been a treat talking to you, getting to know you. Welcome back to Canada. It's great to have you here, and it's great to listen to you talk about MEC and the future of MEC. As I said, I'm a member myself and a shopper, so I'm so happy. The brand will continue. These are difficult times for everyone. So, let's get 2020 behind us pretty quickly. And I wish you continued success as you work to turn the business and shape it in your vision, and wish you the best of luck. So thank you for being on the podcast.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on, and we'll talk again soon, I'm sure.
Please join me this holiday in supporting the Make Kids Smile campaign, along with Stream Commerce, Mastermind Toys, Bath and Footwear and Apparel, Rakuten Kobo, and Truffet and Hill North America. Make Kids Smile is a grassroots, hyper-local Toronto charitable initiative with the goal to raise money, gift wrap, and personally deliver holiday gifts to kids, youth, and teens in Toronto. Visit makekidsmile.ca to learn more and donate today. Rick, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you doing this afternoon?
Doing great, Michael, and thank you so much for the opportunity to have a discussion with you today. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, it's great to hear your voice. Like I say to many of my guests, I wish we were doing this in person, but next best thing. Great to speak with such an experienced leader in the retail space. So let's just jump right in. For those listeners who may not know you as I do, tell us about yourself, your role, and all about Axis.
Yeah, Michael. So my name is Rick Snook. I'm the business development manager, and I handle specifically the retail and banking segments, which are very similar for all of Canada. Axis Communications is a security provider, first and foremost, of cameras and IT solutions with, VMS, video management solutions, audio, and all things. And we fit very well in the retail space. I've been with Axis for a little over 5.5 years, approaching the 6-year mark. I've been in the security industry 37 years. So I've had end-to-end roles within the security industry, talking with end customers. I was an end customer. I was an integrator. So I've seen all dynamics and sides. But Axis is really about, part of our role is innovating for a smarter, safer world. And we really live to that.
Well, I've been asking my guests all year practically about their strategies and how they were thinking about retail in the before time, kind of pre-COVID. But I guess I'm kind of running out of real estate for that question because we're all in it now. But, as I wrap the year, I still would love to get your thoughts on how Axis Communications and you were thinking about retail and retail strategies pre-COVID, because it helps set me, and I think it helps set the listeners up in a framework for how we're approaching retail. And then we'll get into kind of the current state of events. But as you approached 2020, what were the top trends that your organization was focusing on for retail?
So really the focus pre-2020 and actually into the beginning of 2020, and it takes me back to the NRF Big Show. Mm-hmm. Big Show is the first show of the year. COVID really wasn't here yet. We were talking about a lot of innovative solutions for the customer journey within a store, right? Mm-hmm. All the things that we know online retail gives us. How long did they search for an item? How long did they spend there? Where did they go after? Did they do comparison shopping? And there's so many markers that you can do. Imagine if we could turn bricks and mortar into that same solution. And so we were really going down the avenue of saying, loss prevention owns the most IoT devices in any given bricks and mortar location. What if we made them smarter to start aspecting all parts of the business? So, the discussions were around, let's talk to other stakeholders in the business. Let's talk to your customers. Let's talk about all the things that we can do in retail that's going to give a better customer journey. It's going to give more information, and it's going to increase health and safety. And so when I walked around the show and I look at the world of artificial intelligence and all that's coming and how it sits on Internet
machine
of Things
vision,
devices,
all those things, machine vision,
And you're looking at all this technology and you're saying, wow, we're moving to that next level. Mm-hmm. And then we all come back from New York City, we're running on a high, everything's going well. And as a matter of fact, I still remember it. I was going out to Vancouver, and we were about to host a session about aggression, right? And interacting with customers and really dealing with the aggression issue that we saw coming up in retail, but not to the extreme of 2020. So it was very timely. And so here we are. I'm out in Vancouver. I get a notification from several retailers saying, sorry, guys, we have to cancel. We're changing our policy. We're starting to lock down. And so then all of a sudden I went, wow, what happened? And we came back. And so all of those talks that we started to work on, all of the development ceased, right?
Yeah.
Immediately.
I heard this expression this week, kind of got frozen in amber, right? Yeah. It's just like, okay, so we were going down this path, widening the lens, pun intended, around, what you do with your technology. And then it was just like full stop. What and how are we going to react to this crisis?
No, absolutely. And then now you're trying to figure out, okay, here we are. Do we continue with those discussions? Well, most certainly not, because we all know that AP and LP individuals all of a sudden became the focus because they're the people who are always on when these panics happen. So now we move into the next area, and here we are into COVID, and for everybody, it was a different time.
Well, let's get there. So, with the advent of the COVID era of retail, as I've been calling it, talk about some of the unique challenges that retailers are facing. You already mentioned, and we know that, for example, aggression against associates was already escalating pre-COVID. There was already stress on those elements. There's organized retail crime that was doing smashing. There's all kinds of different things. And I'm curious, actually. As you answer that, how do you solicit that kind of information from retailers? What's your process, and then what's your mechanism to keep in touch? But let's answer those two questions. How do you get that information, and what have you been hearing about the past? What is it now? 8-9 months of changing nature of stores and on the retail floor.
Yeah, that's a great question, Michael. One of the things that we struggled with amongst my retail team and our retail team at Axis, because I work with a colleague in the U.S., Hedgie Bartle, and when we sat together, we said, how do we handle this? We we're looking at our retailers, and it's a community, and that community was in disarray. Like they were trying to close stores in 48 or 72 hours. They were trying to get merchandise out. They were trying to board stores up. And then all of a sudden we had civil unrest, and then everything just kept happening. And so we sat back and we said, listen, we can't go to every retailer and start saying, hey, let's look at the next best thermal solution, or let's look at a face mask detection, or let's look at, occupancy counting. That wasn't what it was about. And so we thought long and hard, and we thought, what do our customers need? So we said, man, what if we could let's just reach out to our customers and talk to our customers on a regular basis. So we started to do that. But then we said, why don't we just give them an afternoon where we can book a time and we sit on the call for an hour and we talk about things that are going on. So we reached out to all of our retailers that, attend our retail leadership forums every year that we host, which is just an education networking type thing. And we started to invite people to the call, and everybody kept showing up. And we just talked about what was going on. Right? What were they hearing in the world? Where were they getting their information? Yep. What were they doing during lockdown? And so we started to learn a lot of unique challenges. And one of those was, when all those retail locations were closed, they couldn't travel to them. They couldn't visit them. So how do you make sure that your store's safe? How do you know that your stock's safe? Well, you remotely look at a video surveillance. And all of a sudden, this focus on video was stronger than it ever was before. But then you started to see little things like if the bandwidth wasn't large enough, or if it wasn't common, they couldn't reach their things. And all of a sudden they were in a bit of a pickle. But the common thing was they wanted to talk about the stress they were going through and the things that were affecting them. And so in the end of the day, what we decided to do was a couple things. One was we were going to keep doing things like education, writing articles, doing interviews, and then hosting our Access Retail Open Mic, because that was born out of COVID 2020. And in 2021, we think that's going to continue, but now it's going to become basis for learning, inviting special guests, talking about what's going on in loss prevention and asset protection, right? And all the things that they're dealing with. But most of all, making sure that we stayed in contact with the retailers, because we also needed to understand their challenges, right?
Yeah.
And one of the interesting challenges that we
even with your comprehensive background, right? It was new. This is new. It's one thing to have a store shut down from, a Fort McMurray fire, that kind of thing. It's another thing to have a store broken into during a riot. It's another thing for this.
Yeah.
My goodness, to have a nationwide. I mean, there's no precedent for it, right?
And not only that, so you have all these people and you have leadership who says, hey, this is a really cool technology. When are we implementing it in our store? And everybody goes, but wait a second, what about the customer journey, right? If I walk into a retailer, do I really want to stand at a thermal camera? And if my temperature is a little high because I just ran from the parking lot inside,
then what happens, right?
Then what happens, right? And so all of a sudden we have these great people in retail who are great merchandisers, great salespeople, great everything. And now we're asking them to do enforcement. Now we're asking them to do safety roles. And it's really intriguing how everything changed. And so unique challenges became stop, wait, listen, figure it out, and continue to build on long-term strategy, right? Because the one thing that we know about retail is very diverse. It can change, it can adapt, it can do all kinds of things, but it has a long-term strategy and a long-term goal for many retailers. And we look at the same way. Solutions, you don't want to buy solutions, you don't want to sell solutions where they're going to sit on the shelf, next year, and somebody comes along and says, wow, that was a $3 million investment for what?
Yeah. What do we do with that?
So, we really had to change the way we did it. And it was really about that first and foremost. And then the de-escalation thing. We put on a webinar with Loss Prevention Foundation. We asked them to host with us. And, I brought on Stephen O'Keefe, and Stephen and I had worked together on the de-escalation session. And, we had 600 people show up to that webinar.
LP Lifetime Award winner from Retail Council of Canada, right? Lifetime Award winner. Yeah.
And so
I know Stephen well.
Stephen is part of, he's been part of my advisory board for my retail, my Access Retail Leadership Forum. There are many board members there, but really when I looked at it, I said, wow, I've never seen, here we are with a bunch of people that nobody wanted another webinar, right? Mm-hmm. People were burned out webinars and learning and all of that, but all of a sudden we had 600 people sign up.
Wow.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so now we know what's facing retail. So what we've done all along is stayed in contact. And at one point we went on the calls and we said to the people on the calls, hey, listen, retailers, we understand you're busy. Do you think there's a purpose to continuing with the weekly calls that we host every Tuesday? And they said, absolutely. I look forward to this call. Even if it's just talking out loud and realizing I'm not alone. And I remember one of our calls one day, and this is going to strike well with you, is mental health, right? Well, I just said to everybody on the call, hey guys, today, guys and gals, let's just talk about where you are mentally and what you're doing in order to stay focused and not get down the black hole or not, overwhelm yourself and create work-life balance so you're not burnout. And it was one of the best calls ever. You got different strategies from people. And, one person said, well, it's nice weather. So I go home and I sit out back on the deck by myself and I just let everything go. Right? Because we all have windshield time before we would drive from our offices to home. Right. And now all of a sudden that's gone. So that's where we're at today.
I've heard of this trend on my podcast, The Food Professor, we were talking about, called the fake commute, where people are actually at the point where they're actually going out for their cup of Tim Hortons coffee and driving and just a way to get set for the day. Because that's just another routine for many that has been disrupted amongst many other things. I want to get to the future and how you're thinking about 2021 and the strategic elements and the mental health components and all these things together. Summarize for me for what you've been hearing, the top kind of issues, top 3 issues you're hearing from retail LP and AP professionals. I imagine it's different in every province. I imagine the challenges in Manitoba are very different because you've got, some retailers open, but they've got to have stock hidden or covered. I mean, that brings up a whole other raft of issues. But what are the kind of top 3 issues that are happening right now? And then we'll talk about what you're thinking about, what you and your clients and your industry is thinking about for 2021.
Yeah. So number one, without a doubt, is organized retail crime. Organized retail crime is hammering the retail industry because, like retailers, they also had to take a break during quarantine. And now they're back first and foremost. And obviously,
to get their numbers to hit, they got to make a year-over-year growth, I guess.
Exactly, right? And so it's just another business to them. And so organized crime really on the rise continues to grow, but it's getting a strong force because in any economy disruption, we know that people look for different elements for different reasons. And so that would be number one. Number 2, I still believe de-escalation is right up there. I mean, health and safety of your staff, of your team members, of your customers is still an ongoing issue. And as we get deeper and deeper into this second wave, and the second wave has created issues all on its own because now we have controversy of people who don't believe that we should wear masks, But I always look at it to say, listen, in retail, no shirt, no shoes, no service. Right? Sure. People accommodated to that. What's the difference between that and mask? You're protecting others, and that's what it's really all about. And so I'd look at that and I'd say that's the second problem. And the third problem is really just making sure that your systems are up to date, right? That you create the deterrent, that you're continuing on so that you don't fall behind, because we all know that budgets are going to shift a little bit. But you still have a root cause to be able to make sure that your customers are safe, that you're protecting the assets of the business, and that you're able to do things for the business that are benefiting and feeding it back. Because as much as the top line grows, eventually that bottom line of shrinkage is also going to catch up. And that's going to be something that, listen, nobody thought about a pandemic in their business continuity plan. It was there, but was it really front of mind?
And retailers did have some experience. We had some experience as an industry with SARS and other things. It's not, entirely unprecedented entirely. Right. The scope, scale, and duration is of course, but there's some, there's some experience in the field, right?
Right. So as we look at those 3 issues, keeping up with technology and where it's going to go and where the business is going to change. And so by technology and business changing, here's an example I'll give you. Curbside pickup. creates the threat of an individual leaving the security of the building of the business and going outside. So how do you keep video on them? Do you adapt to having body-worn cameras, right, as a solution to be able to do that curbside pickup, not only for proof that you've placed the item in the individual's trunk, but you were also on contact tracing, you kept your distance. It was a safety measure for the individual. When I look at things like e-commerce, and e-commerce, Retail Council of Canada, yourself, everybody's talked about the adaptation and how well retailers have done. I'm over the moon about it. And e-commerce has always been the threat. Is brick and mortar going to go away? And what I think is going to happen is I think brick and mortar is going to adapt. And all of those store centers may change their footprint for shopping front of store, but shipping back of store. And does that ratio change? And if it does, how does security change with it? Right? And so if we start to look at that and we look at the model of, in the US where people have said Amazon, right, is now looking at some of the big stores that have shut down. Are they going to fill that space as fulfillment center? I mean, who knows? But our local retailers and buy local and our cross-country brands, they're all going to adapt and change. Do I think that curbside pickup is going to change? No, I think people are going to adapt to it. Just like I think, we're going to have a vaccine, but I don't think masks are going to go away. I think they're becoming part of our culture. And if they do, what does that mean for the potential risk moving forward for retailers? Because we've seen what it does to those who are on the organized crime side, right? I'm wearing
seeking to hide themselves.
Now I have a reason to hide and nobody's questioning me. So I can go in and do whatever I want, right? And so it's got a bit evasive. So I think there's a few things that we're going to see in terms of technology. One is I think AI is becoming more of a future, machine learning, right? And artificial intelligence on the edge. That's what we're focusing on. We built a device where we're making the decision on the edge. And the reason for that is, listen, in Canada, we still have many areas of the country that don't have high-speed internet, right? That are limited in bandwidth. Retail hasn't changed. And the most important thing in retail is making sure that sale goes through, right? That transaction is the most important part of retail, not only for the business, but also for the customer journey, right?
So it's using it, and many other things are using that bandwidth, so to speak, right?
So if we can make the decisions on the edge and we can create alerts that not only help loss prevention, asset protection, but it helps the business, right? Where is my concentration? Where is my heat mapping in my store?
Unusual movement patterns. These are the kind of things you're thinking of, yeah?
Exactly. So our focus is really going to be on the long term. But secondly, I think the thing that we learn the most is scalability. And scalability is going to be interesting. And the thing known as cloud has always been kind of frowned upon, right, in the retail world. You don't want to share your data anywhere, and we really have to look at PII, right, and make sure that when we're looking at it, that we're going to deal with the privacy issues that exist. But I foresee it that in the non too distant future, we're going to start to see all of that metadata go to cloud. But careful. Right? Careful metadata, not...
You're going to have to choose your partner. I mean, you've got several big partners in the world, one of whom happens to also be a retailer.
Yep.
And so you're going to have some decisions to make, and there's another couple of big players who are not. So we'll see where that sorts out. I mean, the last question for you, this has been great discussion, so thank you. It's been very enlightening. As you think about, you must have had, as an organization, technology and process in the pipeline that, these things don't take months, they take years. What do you see for 2021 from a solution? You probably moved from, you did a great job of keeping in touch with the customers and helping retailers in the early days. But now as we move into the second phase, the second year of the COVID era, how do you see tackling the second year, and what do you think will be your approach to that?
I think we're going to continue to listen to what the customers are saying, and we're going to stay in close contact with all of our customers and get their input. But I think we're going to focus on things like curbside pickup. I think that body-worn cameras are going to become an important place for retailers to just make sure that it's safety first, right? And being able to not have, there's a million cameras in the world, but body cameras just create safety, making sure that we have a view of our staff outside. But also
a lot of associates. It's a lot of associates outside the lease line, right?
Yep. And then lastly, let's look at the restaurants. Restaurants are going to have to continue with the new way of doing business. And so we want to give them a way of no contact, right, when people are picking up. So having an intercom at the door that recognizes somebody at the door and then rings to the back. And it's a hands-free discussion to say, I'm here to pick up order 3578. I'm from Uber Eats. Okay. Somebody brings it to the door, says, please back up from the door, sets it down, and then leaves. When we're receiving stock in the back door, contactless touch points for retail, I think those things are going to be important. And then I think that we're going to see an era of, okay, so how is the business going to change? Are we going to worry about occupancy? And are we going to automate that process? Are we going to make that investment? And does the business see enough in the measurement of footfall traffic beyond COVID-19? So wherever we're looking at solutions, I think 2021 is not going to be about COVID solutions. I think it's going to be about what solutions are going to sustain the business for today, tomorrow, and the future. And I think that that's where we all need to be at from the technology partner standpoint.
Well, Rick, you've got tremendous depth of insight and data, both from your experience and from many years, and also from just that hands-on approach. So congratulations. I wish you in Access Communications much continued success. So thanks for joining me on the Voice of Retail podcast. Great discussion, and I look forward to hearing more in 2021 and beyond. So thanks again, and stay safe.
Yeah, and thank you, Michael. And one last thing, thank you to all of the retail associations. Thank you to all of the retailers. Thank you to everybody who's put themselves in harm's way to keep us safe, and keep staying safe. And thank you to the entire retail community.
Yeah, right on. Thanks, Rick.
Thank you.
Well, thanks to Eric and Rick for being my guests, plus Omnovos and Access Communication for their support on this episode. If you like this podcast, please subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. Rate and review, and be sure to recommend to a friend or colleague in the retail industry. I'm Michael LeBlanc, founder and president of LeBlanc Company Inc. You can learn more about me on www.meleblanc.co or, of course, on LinkedIn. Until next time, have a safe week.